Robert Costa, let's talk about the op-ed that showed up in the pages of the Wall Street Journal tonight. Nothing about this has been normal. Sure isn't normal to hear from a Supreme Court nominee in an op-ed like this. In this case, Kavanaugh switching to his indoor voice to talk about what he meant to say.
Oh, it's a strategic move by the White House. They know this nomination is on the brink of maybe falling apart as all these moderate Republican senators, even some conservative Republicans, privately voiced concerns to White House counsel Don McGahn and others. And if you're going to the Wall Street Journal editorial page, it used to be edited by Bob Bartley. It's the high church, really, for a lot of these elite conservative lawyers and Republican lawmakers and officials. And they look to that. If you're going there, that means you have a direct message for that block of the Republican Party.
Sabrina, Jerry Ford didn't get to be president for long, but while he was president, he appointed a young, brilliant Chicago jurist named John Paul Stevens, who became a firm member of the liberal wing of the court before his retirement. I'm going to play for you what former Justice Stevens said at a forum in Florida that was scheduled before knowing this was all going to be a thing. We'll talk about it on the other side.
I thought he had definitely the qualifications for to sit on the Supreme Court. The hearings caused me to change my mind. He has demonstrated a potential bias, and that the senators should really pay attention to it.
So, Sabrina, we've mashed up the essence of what he was saying today. He has defended him as a jurist, as a lawyer, but once he saw the behavior, and this is where so many people have hopped off, he changed his mind.
Absolutely. There are two storylines that emerged from last week's hearing, and one was, of course, the circumstances around the alleged sexual assault and having Dr. Christine Blasey Ford's testimony against that of Judge Kavanaugh's. The other was the strikingly partisan tone that Judge Kavanaugh took in his own testimony, and he's, of course, written this op-ed in part, I think, because of the comments from Justice Stevens and others who have raised concerns over the issue of impartiality. Now, it's worth noting that Judge Kavanaugh has cited his emotions during the hearing, but he was reading from a prepared statement. And I think in part that was because last Thursday he was performing for an audience of one, and that was the President of the United States. Tonight, as he's written this op-ed in the Wall Street Journal, of course, he is appealing to some of those moderate Republicans who might be on the fence, in part because they are very much concerned as to whether or not he can be seen as a neutral arbiter from the highest bench in this country. And I do think that Justice Stevens might be one of those people who, at the last stage, has prompted some of those lawmakers, Jeff Flake, Lisa Murkowski, and Susan Collins, to have more pause. It's important to recall Jeff Flake said at the Atlantic Festival earlier this week in Washington that we cannot have that kind of behavior on the court, that the temperament that Judge Kavanaugh displayed during that hearing, that could not proceed.
And Garrett, we continue to cover this split, this cleave, the Republicans saying nothing to see here. And Cory Booker went on this network tonight and straight up said the fix was in on this FBI report, and there this problem sits.
Yeah, Brian, it's a real problem. You know, the rules around this FBI report are that senators are not supposed to discuss the specifics of its content, and senators in both parties who I spoke to today went about as far as they possibly could to get up to that line without crossing it. And I had a conversation with Cory Booker today about this subject too, and he essentially said, look, I can't tell you the specifics, but the idea that there's not malfeasance, that there's not other issues here, that there's not other questions here is ludicrous. He said, you know, he's not a professional investigator, but as he read page after page of these 46 pages of FBI interview notes, he was, you know, presented with all these questions that he wishes he, as an amateur investigator, could have gone back and asked these witnesses. So for Democrats, they feel like this is this report, this FBI effort, was a sham. It didn't do the job. It provided political cover for Republicans. Republicans who I talked to coming out of this meeting were almost uniform in saying zero corroboration, no corroboration. That was the sort of the code word from Republicans as they were digesting this report. I don't think we're going to know what's in it until, or if perhaps House Democrats are in the majority in the spring of next year and they subpoena the contents. But everybody got a little bit of what they wanted politically here to continue to make their arguments, Brian, and we're not going to to know what's in this report with any finality when the first vote gets cast tomorrow morning.
And Sabrina, I almost forgot to mention this. Republicans lost a vote if it has to happen this weekend, and that is Senator Steve Daines of Montana has said, I'll be seeing you guys. I have a daughter to walk down the aisle at her wedding. Having done that, I applaud this move by Senator Daines, but it might either stop or extend the vote clock. If it can't happen Friday, he's going to be away Saturday and Sunday. They may have to kind of hold it open Monday, and that, of course, is a huge risk that something else drops.
Yes, and it's my understanding that Senator Steve Daines is potentially going to get on a flight immediately after his daughter's wedding and perhaps arrive in Washington first thing Sunday morning. And in that scenario, they would leave the vote open because every vote counts. This truly is coming down to the wire. And I think ultimately what this will really boil down to is whether some of those moderate Republican senators believe that the FBI was able to conduct a fair and comprehensive investigation. I think there'll be also a really open-ended question as to whether the senators as well as the American public will learn more about the process and more specifically what were the parameters for this investigation and what, if any, constraints were placed on the Bureau by the White House as they carried out this investigation into Judge Kavanaugh and the allegations against him.
So, Bob Costa, Mitch McConnell's going to have what is, in effect, a test vote. If it fails or goes south, do they pull this nominee?
At this point, they're full steam ahead with this cloture vote, and they want to move it to that final vote. But if the cloture vote fails, it really becomes almost impossible for the nominee to go forward because if you're not signaling to move the process as a Republican or senator at this moment, you're not going to vote on the final vote. And that's where we stand.
And are you hearing confidence from the West Wing?
This is a process that has Don McGahn, the White House counsel, as his swan song as he heads for the exit, trying to push this through to have a second Supreme Court justice under his watch. You don't see him on TV. He's a lonely figure inside of this White House, not even really getting along with President Trump, based on our reporting. Yet he's trying to push it through, talking through with Kavanaugh, how to move this forward, getting that op-ed in the Wall Street Journal. At this moment, late on a Thursday night, there's confidence, but there's not a lot of it.
Can't thank you guys enough for joining us and starting us off after a busy day. Garrett Haake, Robert Costa, Sabrina Siddiqui. Appreciate it greatly. Coming up for us, what does it mean for the FBI that their work, specifically the limits placed on their work, could further drive us apart as people? And later, there's short-term and there's long-term. Long-term, a Justice Kavanaugh could be on the bench for 40 years. Short-term, what about those elections 33 days away? The 11th hour, just getting started on a Thursday night.
Joining meeting.
Fight your cough and break up mucus with new Alka-Seltzer Plus Cough and Mucus. Just one pill works 12 hours, all day or all night. Max your cold relief with Alka-Seltzer Plus.
I want to get a bar put in over there. Do you know any good contractors?
Yeah, I might.
Nice! Give me a bunch of quotes, check the reviews, and verify the credentials and qualifications.
You can't expect your neighbor